Okay, Spencer.
Imagine you just nailed your dream job. You work constantly and you're tired all the time, but it's what you love, so you're happy. Now, imagine working that same job, only this time you don't earn a dime. You work just as hard, but all the money goes to people working above you. Now, most of us probably wouldn't consider that a dream job, and why should we? Why would we put in hard work and not reap any of the benefits? Well, this example may be a little drastic. This is essentially how the NCAA is working in the sports market today. The NCAA, or the National Collegiate Athletic Association, is an organization that regulates and coordinates athletics across 1,200 different institutions and 460,000 different student athletes. The organization was formed in 1906 with this mission statement. To govern competition in fair, safe, equitable, and sportsmanlike manner, and to integrate intercollegiate athletics into higher education so that the educational experience of the student athlete is paramount. While this mission statement may have held true 100-some years ago, it's definitely not the case today. The NCAA has grown into one of the largest corporations, and it generates over $1 billion in revenue yearly. While the finances have grown in this institution, the governing bodies have not, and the NCAA student athletes are the ones taking the biggest hit. The NCAA that believes that through scholarships they are fairly compensating student athletes for the work that they do in their sports. However, in the scope of college athletics today, these scholarships are simply not enough. The NCAA needs to pay their student athletes. In this speech, I will discuss 3 different pay-for-play options that are currently on the table for the NCAA. I'll then conclude with my own option. First, the wage gap between student athletes and paid NCAA members is most notable when viewing the coaches' salaries across America. The amount that coaches get paid is typically determined by the university and is based on the size of the university and the size of the program and how much money is generated. All this makes perfect sense until you see a bunch of college coaches getting paid millions of dollars while student athletes still get paid nothing. If you guys think that this is unfair, you're not alone. As a matter of fact, many of the Division I football coaches have seen this problem and are advocating for change. This brings us to our first proposal, the stipend proposal. In 2011, at a Southeastern Conference meeting, Steve Spurrier, the then coach of the South Carolina football team, suggested this proposal. He stated that he would pay $300 out of pocket to every single one of his football players per game played. With 70 players, that's about $20,000 per game and $294,000 per season. While this may seem like a lot, it's well in the means of a Division I football coach. In 2012, Spurrier alone made $2.8 million. So this proposal would only cost him 10% of his income. The money given to the student athletes would then be used to help many struggling students and could also serve as compensation for a job well done. Spurrier was quoted saying this: "For what the coaches are making now, we all would love to do it." 6 other coaches at this same meeting signed Spurrier's proposal. This increased vocalization from the coaches shows that the NCAA not only has a problem, but people are noticing it. I do believe that this would be a step in the right direction, but I also think that the NCAA would never implement this plan. It's a logistical challenge which ultimately ends in the NCAA losing control over much of their finances. Ultimately, this is why regulations are still in place prohibiting coaches from giving their players any sort of money. Secondly, the NCAA believes that they are compensating their student athletes based on the work performed through scholarships. Well, let's do a little more math. Of new students coming into the NCAA, only 2% of those students actually obtain a sports scholarship. This means that if 100,000 students are coming into the NCAA, only 2,000 of those students will get scholarships. Now, if we generously assume that all of those 2,000 scholarships are full ride scholarships or $100,000 value, that would be $200 million in scholarships paid out from the NCAA. This is still only 5% of their yearly revenue generated. If the NCAA truly believes that they are fairly paying their student athletes based on scholarships, then they need to pay more. This brings us to our second proposal, the full cost scholarships proposal. The full cost scholarships proposal is in addition to a full ride scholarship that goes beyond standard room, board, tuition, and added fees. The added money would be given to the student athletes and would cover extra education-related expenses, such as food, transportation, occasional entertainment, whatever it may be. What this proposal is doing is adding on to the full ride scholarship while putting money directly back into the student athlete's hands. The commissioner of the Big Ten, Jim Delaney, is the main advocate for this proposal. He believes it's a fair way to give back to the students, but he also acknowledges certain problems with the proposal. He stated, "We only provide room, board, fees, and tuition. Why? Because we have a lot of people on scholarship." What Delaney is saying here is that institutions don't have enough money to fund these scholarships, but the NCAA does and should be required to provide more money. The logistical problems again arise in this when you think about the markets between schools. Some schools have larger sports markets, some schools have smaller sports markets, and because of this, it would make it difficult to regulate which school gets which money. And it's for this reason that I believe the NCAA will likely not implement this plan either. And lastly, NCAA student athletes are not allowed to build on their own brand. Since student athletes have little to no time for a part-time job, it only makes sense that they would build on their name and try and make money off of it. But the NCAA has clear restrictions against this. In order to compete in the NCAA, you have to maintain what's called amateur status. And amateur status is basically a long list of rules stating things that you can and can't do, ultimately constraining student athletes from making money off of themselves. A perfect example of this is in 2010, when a handful of Ohio State football players were suspended for selling their game-worn jerseys. The NCAA doesn't allow them to sell their game-worn jerseys, but sell similar jerseys for a profit. This brings us to our last proposal, the compensation proposal. The compensation proposal states that student athletes should receive royalties based on money that's made in their name. The royalties would be placed in an escrow account and would be given to the student athlete once their amateur status is used up. This allows student athletes to keep their amateur status while also building on their own name. Many people are profiting every day by star athletes, and the athlete ends up seeing none of the money. This is why the compensation proposal makes perfect sense. However, this would likely only help star athletes and can result in fights and arguments in the locker room and ultimately doesn't solve the full scope of the situation. It's for this reason that I also don't think that the NCAA will implement this plan. So to conclude, there isn't one simple solution to solving the NCAA's problems. It's been over 100 years and student athletes are still not getting the money that they rightfully deserve. The simple answer is to pay them. But it gets a little more complicated with that because the NCAA wants to keep amateur status. What's the difference between a football player who's paid in college and a professional football player who's paid professionally? It might be easy to say that there's no difference, but I think that's the wrong course of action. Student athletes approach the game with a sense of passion and energy that can easily be tainted by money. This leads to my proposal. I believe student athletes should be paid a set amount of money bi-weekly based on the size of their program. The money paid to each student individually would be even across the program and would not exceed minimum wage. This proposal allows for students to essentially have a part-time job while also still playing with that same passion and energy that is associated with amateur status. In addition, the NCAA needs to revise their flexibility rules on building the student athletes building their own brand. It's not right for someone to make money off someone else's hard work. In conclusion, the NCAA was built to cultivate education and academics in one organization. In recent years, greed and power have damaged that cultivation process. Obviously, the NCAA isn't going to change overnight, but it's up to all of us to recognize this problem and call for a change. Together, we can help student athletes work their dream jobs while being compensated fairly.
So in your proposed solution, you said that there should be like a set amount between the entire program. So say like for St. Thomas football, there's, I don't know exactly the number of players, but over 100 players in the program. Would you suggest that the starting running back makes the exact same amount of money as a freshman linebacker that won't play for 3 years?
Yeah, for my proposal, essentially, yeah. But the whole idea is that it would be different based on the program.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, St. Thomas probably wouldn't get any sort of grant because they don't make as much, or I mean, they probably do, but yeah.
So if I just want to make sure I'm understanding, it would be for like D1 colleges because those are the colleges that get like full ride scholarships.
It's all based on how much money is
The
brought
program
in.
is making.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it would never exceed minimum wage. That way, students
Still.
basically just have a part-time job.
Okay, cool.
Well, some sports bring in a lot more money than, like, let's say like football is like a spectator sport, it brings in a lot of money, but let's say like running or cross country or track or something, doesn't have many fans, maybe not fans, but they don't have many spectators and don't bring in much money. How do you solve that issue? Or do they get paid the same? Does track like get paid the same as football?
No, they would get paid less because they are bringing in less money.
Okay, good. Thank you.